Hi guys, Ellie Sax here, and today we are looking at cheap versus expensive saxes. So let's go.
Ellie Sax. Go!
Today we are looking at a cheap saxophone versus an expensive saxophone, and we are going to listen and see whether there are any differences. We're going to go over them. Lots of people want to know if they should buy a cheap saxophone when they're starting or whether to invest in a more expensive instrument. So we're going to check if the differences are worthwhile. Here are my three alto saxophones here. So we have the cheapest one. This is a Startone SAS 75, SAS 75. You buy it from Thomann and it's about £220. So a pretty cheap saxophone there. This is a Yamaha 62. They come in at around £2,300 new and they are great saxophones. And this is my saxophone that I do professional gigs on, and it is a Selmer MkVI vintage saxophone 1972. And that's worth about £4,500 to £5,000. So let's see if they are worth the difference in price. So that one is 16 times more expensive than that one. That one's 9 times more expensive than that one, which means that that one is about 1.8 times more expensive than that one. So we're going to chat through their features and we're going to go from the cheapest to the most expensive. I haven't got the original mouthpieces with me, so I'm going to use my mouthpiece that I use as a standard mouthpiece. It's my Selmer MkVI vintage mouthpiece. So I'm going to use that across all of them and compare them. First things first, we're going to look at the Startone SAS 75. Full disclosure, we have stuck lights to it. So we also run a company called Light Up Entertainment. We have incredible light up sax players and light up bongo players, and they play for people's parties and weddings. So we have got LED tape stuck to this one. It doesn't come with LED tape as standard. So let's have a look. It's kind of quite a greeny gold, this one. The Yamaha 62 is a lot more of kind of an orangey gold, like a coppery gold. So we've got some fake, slightly matte pearls here, which are really nice, and actually they're really nicely indented as well so that your fingers sit really nicely on them. It's got pretty good action. There's not a lot of play on the keys, which for a cheap saxophone is really good. You do find that sometimes on some of the cheaper saxophones, the keys do move a little bit, but these ones are actually really solid. It feels a little bit clunky. The pads are nice quality. It does have a top F sharp key, which is important if you want to be playing high notes. As all you sax players know, you need that for dew belt, so it's pretty important for DJ sax gigs. It's got a nice pattern here, which you can slightly see through the dried on glue. It's got a nice star tone here. Also, on lots of the cheaper saxophones, these corks do tend to come off quite easily on the side keys, and they fall off after kind of a couple of months worth of use. We've had this saxophone for 2 years and none of the corks have come off. So far it's done pretty well. So let's hear it play. That was the Startone. I think it sounds a little bit dull. It sounds like there's a high pass filter and a low pass filter on it, which is quite an achievement. However, it does play pretty nicely for a £220 instrument. The action's pretty even across the board. I would say that the lower notes have a little bit slower action, so you have to be a bit firmer with your fingers than you would do on, say, the Yamaha or the Selma. But for an instrument that's 16 times cheaper than the Selma and 9 times cheaper than the Yamaha, it is pretty good. The side keys feel really sturdy, but it does mean that they can be a little bit hard to push, so you do have to move your hand to kind of manage those, which can be quite debilitating when you're doing quick notes. However, the action down the front keys is really even. I think it feels like it sits quite flat. So you do have to push your mouthpiece on really far to get it into pitch, and then you do have to lip up as well. So naturally the whole instrument sits a little bit under pitch, a little bit under the 440 kind of tuning. So that's something to consider. So you might want a mouthpiece that comes out a bit sharper, or you might just shove your mouthpiece on a bit further. But I would say it is pretty good for a cheap saxophone. Let's have a look at some of the features of the Yamaha and then see how it compares in sound. This is the Yamaha 62. It's a lovely colour. It's kind of a more rich orangey gold, a bit more coppery gold. Very, very shiny, and a nice pattern here. It does have a high F sharp key, and it does have a high F key there as well. The action on this feels great. You can hear when you put all the keys down that it's more resonant and more bright sounding already. I like that sound.
Nice.
All the keys fit down really nicely. The side keys are a little bit lighter, so in a way they don't feel as sturdy as the Startone, but actually when you get to playing it, you'll find that they sit under the hands a little bit better, and so it makes it a lot easier to play it, especially when you're playing fast passages. One thing that Yamaha are always good at is tuning, so I am looking forward to playing this because I think the tuning up and down the instrument will be really nicely balanced. It was quite strange on the Startone actually, because you usually find that the top end of the saxophone is sharp and the bottom end is flat, but on the Startone the top end is flat and the bottom end is a little bit less flat, but still flat. So you compensate differently, which feels odd when you're used to doing it the other way around on pretty much every other instrument. I like the action up here. This feels like really, really solid key. The octave mechanism is pretty much the same on all the three saxophones. So you find that on a Yamaha and some of the other models, you get a different octave mechanism, but these are all very similar. So let's have a listen to this one. Such a nice instrument to play. I can't even express how great that feels. It's so easy and effortless. There's very little resistance within the saxophone, which you feel quite a lot of resistance on the Startone, and it feels quite muffled in comparison, whereas this just opens up and you just have such a bright, punchy sound on the Yamahas. It is absolutely gorgeous, but it's also quite rich sound as well. I thought it was pretty in tune from the top to the bottom. The bottom was really easily coming out, and there aren't any problems with leaks or anything on this, which to be fair, you wouldn't expect when you spend just over £2,000 on a saxophone, but Yamaha always deliver a really, really well-adjusted saxophone. I actually played on a Yamaha 62 the whole way through music college, and it never let me down. They're great from classical through to pop and through to jazz. They've got really nice balanced sounds, a little bit brighter than you'd find on a new Selma or sometimes on a Yamaha, so that is something to take into consideration. If you like a nice bright sound, the Yamaha's perfect. I think this is an awesome saxophone. In comparison to the Startone, obviously it's a better instrument. Of course it's going to be, because it's 9 times the price. Would I think it's worth spending 9 times the price? If you are wanting to do professional music, absolutely 100%. This is an easier instrument to play and it sounds better for it as well. I've got to say, this made me smile when I played it just then after the Startone. The reason is that it's a beautifully made instrument, really nicely balanced, and just gives you joy. Another thing to mention is that it's a lot louder. This punched out a much higher volume than the other saxophone. So let's see what it's like in comparison to the Selma, and let's talk about the Selma's quirks and features and compare them to the Yamaha. This is my Selmer MkVI. I bought this probably 6 years ago now and I adore it. It's my baby. It's a 1972 model. The thing about the Selmer Mk6s is that the original models, no one really knows the metallic composition of them. So each one is very unique, so people really search for them. You can't replicate them, they don't make them anymore. So when you find one that you love, you buy it. All of the Selmer Mk6s play really differently. So if you do want to buy a Selmer Mk6, I would really recommend trying it out first, because they're all really different instruments with really different quirks. They're very quirky instruments. If you find the right one, they're absolutely beautiful. I was looking for one for about 8 years before I found the one that I absolutely loved. So it really does take time to find the one that you fall in love with. This is mine. As you can tell, it looks pretty quirky. Some of the pearls have dropped off. You can hear already, it's extremely clacky and clicky, and the key noises are really loud. It's lost a lot of its corks, but we can forgive it that because it's 50 years old now. But all of the corks off these top ones have gone, so we've got some pretty loud noises. I could get that fixed, to be fair, quite easily. These keys are really nice on the Selmer. I find that quite a lot of the time, these rollers are really resistant in new saxophones. So it's quite hard to go between a C and an E flat. Or on this Selmer Mk6, they're really nice and easy, and they're pretty flat, so it's easy to go between them. We've got a high F sharp key here, and we've got a high F key. So it's got all the things that we need on it. I see buying a Selmer Mk6 as Harry Potter going to Ollivander's and being told,
"The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter."
Let's give it a play and show you guys how it sounds. That was my Selmer Mk6. It's a lot louder, that's one thing for sure. It's hard to put into words how I feel it's different. I feel like I love it. I feel like it expresses what I want to play. It matches me. Which sounds weird. It's out of tune. The top is out of tune from the bottom. Some random notes are out of tune, so you have to really compensate a lot with your mouth. It's clicky and clacky, and there's loads of key noise, which I know drives Harry crazy when we make tracks and I record it in, and he's got to try and get rid of the key clicks. It has some pretty worn down keys. Some of the pearls are missing. So there's loads of negatives to this saxophone, but it's my favorite by a mile. I think it sounds more rich. I think the top end sounds a lot more rich. I think it's got character. I love how it looks. I love that it looks a little bit beaten up and that its lacquer's starting to come off. I love that I can't get one exactly the same. Practically, if you wanted a saxophone that's gonna deliver anything you want it to deliver, and that's gonna be in tune, that's gonna sound great, that's gonna be awesome as a professional saxophone, get the Yamaha 62. They're great saxophones. They are beautiful, they're resonant, they work. You buy a Selmer Mk6 because you fall in love with a Selmer Mk6, not because it's a practical saxophone to buy, and not because it's the best saxophone to do gigs on. Pop gigs, it's really important that you're in tune, because a lot of the music is fully synthesized, it's not real instruments being recorded, so you are having to tune to MIDI instruments. So you have to be good on your tuning, otherwise you stick out like a sore thumb. So this would not be a practical option. The Yamaha 62 would be a very practical option, but I'll choose this every time because I love it. Makes no sense. So we've got them all back out now to do some final thoughts over them. I would say, looking at them next to each other, the Yamaha looks really pretty. The Selmer's neck is more bent to one side and is a lot thinner than the neck on these two. Startone, £220. £220. So 9 times more expensive is the Yamaha 62 at $2,300. 16 times more expensive is the Selmer at $4,500 to $5,000. If you're looking for a starter saxophone, the Startone is great. It's better than I thought it was going to be. It's pretty balanced. It's not really in tune. It's in tune with itself. It's a bit flat. So if you're a starter sax player, you are going to be flat. So don't start playing along with tracks quite yet until you've worked your embouchure up. But great option as a starter 200 quid saxophone if you don't really know if you want to do the saxophone. Yamaha, beautiful professional instrument, works perfectly, beautifully in tune, gorgeous action on the keys, resonant, bright, fun instrument. Great instrument if you want to be doing gigging on the saxophone and you're looking to invest in a professional instrument. Awesome. £2,000 more expensive, or a bit more than £2,000 more expensive, is the Selma MkVI. Like Ollivander said, the wand chooses the wizard, Harry. That's the case with the Selma MkVI. You don't buy a Selma MkVI out of sense. It's out of tune. It has got its key missing, it clicks and clacks, but it's just got that something that I was looking for. It's got such a rich and beautiful sound, and it just feels like it matches me. It feels like my wand. So that's these three saxophones, wildly different price ranges. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put together some quick comparisons for you guys so that you can hear them side by side, so that you can let me know what you guys think of these three saxes and whether you think that these are worth that much more than that. Don't forget to subscribe for more tips and tricks, more info on saxophones, on equipment, on gigs. Drop me a question in the comments if you have any questions about any of these saxophones or about anything saxophone related, or just let me know what you think of these saxophones and which one is your favorite. See you guys soon. This is Ellie Sax signing out.